Hey guys, Ben here. I'm going to try to make this video as cleanly as I can, with as little hitches as I can. Depth perception problem when looking through the camera. And that is a question I get very often asked by higher end modders. I helped Drac wire up Sanguine. I didn't get a mention, which is kind of sad, but I sat next to him for 5 hours while he wired it up to talk him through everything. And then I also got asked by Wacom to help him out with his new blaster, which is probably not out by the time this video comes out. He's working on one if you follow him on Facebook. And that is how to wire up LEDs. And there's a good way to do it, and then there's every other way to do it. And for Nerf purposes, there's really only one way you need to worry about it. Your power source does not matter in terms of doing it right or wrong. I use another power source besides my LiPo for two reasons. Number one, when I'm showing off the blaster, which is often the case, whether it was at DartCon or somewhere else, if I'm just showing it around, I don't always have the LiPo in it, and it's nice to be able to turn on the LEDs without the LiPo in there. The second reason why I don't like it hooked up to the LiPo is when you rev the motors, it will actually dim the lights just a little bit for a split second. Now, some people think that's cool. Personally, I don't like it. I like to remain a constant the whole time, but that's really up to what you want in your blaster, how much space you have in your blaster, whether you have enough space for another battery and whatnot. If that's what you prefer, by all means, but that's not how I'm going to be showing you. But the principle is the same, and by the time this video is done, hopefully you will understand the principles as well. So first of all, we're going to go off the checklist of what you need to actually get. Number one is the LED. You want these type of LEDs, which all have clear lenses. Do not buy any sort of colored lens, even if it's red or whatever. Always buy the clear ones. They're in reverse because I'm supposed to be looking at it from this way, but that one's the red one, that one's yellow, and it's the lights themselves that are the colors and not the lenses. And that's just due to the quality and the brightness of the LED, so always get the clear lensed ones. Do not get them in store. They are extremely expensive in store. They're about $1.50 to $2 a piece for one of these things. It's absolutely ridiculous. And you can get these on Amazon, link in the description, for, I can't remember what I got them for because I got these a really long time ago, but probably somewhere in the neighborhood of like $8 for 50, somewhere around there. So you're going to need to figure out what color LED you need, and usually the color determines what voltage it needs. But when you're buying them, it'll also say in the description what the voltage is. As long as it's a standard 5mm LED, then they're always going to be 20 milliamps. That's the thing that you need to know about that. Next, you got the hookup wire. This is just 22 gauge wire, I believe. It's just PVC wire. It's the cheap stuff. It doesn't matter what wire you use as long as it is usable wire. And the reason for that is it's just low amperage. You really don't need anything for it. I've used 30 gauge before, which is really small, and it still works. So there's that. Next up, you don't need this many. You need some resistors, at least one resistor, probably only one resistor. I just have these because they're different ohms, and we'll get into that in a minute. So the next thing you're going to want to decide is what color LEDs you want to use. Let's say I want to use blue LEDs. Let's use green. Another thing that you're really going to want is a button cell battery, and these are much cheaper online, but you can get them in store. This is a 3-volt button cell. It doesn't matter what size it is as long as it's 3 volts. The reason why you want this is because before you solder this into your blaster and hook it up and everything, you want to make sure that it actually works, because I have seen LEDs come dead. I've never personally gotten one, but like 2 of the ones Drac got were just completely dead from the beginning. So that kind of sucks. The longer lead is always positive, and the shorter lead is negative. So we're going to hook that up, and that's a good LED. And we're going to check all of the LEDs in the circuit that we're going to use to make sure all of them are good. So that's the last LED, and it's good. So the 3 that we're going to use is good. And that brings us to the next point. How many LEDs are you going to have in your circuit? So lay them out on your blaster if you need to. Figure out how many you need. For these purposes, I'm just going to use 3 LEDs because that's really all we need. Now, what is our power source? That's the next thing we need to figure out. Now, these are rather expensive, and I don't recommend using them just because they're expensive. They're absolutely fine for LEDs, and don't let anyone tell you any different. But I'm actually going to use a 9 volt. Oh my god, it's a 9 volt. This isn't motors, relax. 9 volts will work perfectly fine for LEDs. That's the connector that I'm going to be using. If you're going to be using something else, you can use the battery tray that's built into the blasters, whether it's 4 AA's or whatever else you need. But generally what I use is either a 9 volt or the stock AA battery connectors, which is usually 4 AA's. So now we have the two components that we need to figure out what kind of ohm resistor we need. So there's 3 things you need to know. Number 1 is what the voltage is for the LED, what the milliamp is for the LED, and what voltage your battery is. So this is why I have, again, I wrote this backwards because I wrote on the inside. It was kind of stupid because obviously I can't see it from this side with all the LEDs there. So I've just learned to read backwards. But the green ones are 3 to 3.4 volts, so we're always going to go with the higher end one, so 3.4 volts. And 5mm LEDs are always going to be 20 milliamps. So that's 2 of the things that we need. And then obviously this is a 9 volt. So that's all we need to know. I'll put a link in the description for what's called an LED resistor calculator. So now comes the actual point of when we need to know how to actually wire these up. We're going to wire them up in what's called parallel. Now that's when you only need one resistor. That's really good because there are other ways like series, but then you have to hook up a resistor to every single LED. That's not only a pain in the neck, but it takes up more resources, it takes up more time, it takes up more space, and it's simply not what we want for a Nerf build. So we're going to wire it in what's called parallel. Click that link in the description and scroll all the way down until you see LEDs in parallel, and that's how the circuit's going to be running. So you're going to want to type in the calculations. The supply voltage is going to be the battery that you're using. In our case, it's going to be 9 volts. The next box down is going to say voltage drop across LED, and that's going to be the voltage that's required to power a single LED. And we know from our package that it's 3.4 volts, so that's what we're going to type in. The next one is desired LED current, and we're going to type in 20 because we need 20 milliamps for each LED. The last thing we need to type in is how many LEDs we're going to be using in the circuit, and for this project we're going to be using 3. So after you hit the calculate button, it'll tell you exactly what you need, and for this project I need a 100 ohm resistor. To clear up the confusion, the first box is going to be the actual ohm resistance that we really need. For instance, this one is 93.333 infinite. Unfortunately, they don't make a 93 ohm resistor, so we're going to go with the next one up, which is 100 ohms, and that will be the second box. So whatever the second box is, that's going to be our ohm resistance. Now, if you don't have a 100 ohm resistor, you always want to go higher. So 100 ohms would be ideal. If I have 110, I can use that. 120, 130, I can use all of that. But I don't want to use a 90 ohm resistor. I don't want to use an 80 ohm resistor or anything lower than 100 ohms. All of these figures are going to change when you type in your own power supply, when you type in your own LEDs and voltage and however many you're using. So this is going to change from build to build, which is why I'm telling you exactly what is what. I should probably go downstairs and get my proper wire cutters, but I'm far too lazy for that. So I'm just going to use this. Now I should probably be using the correct colors for this, but I'm not going to. So we're going to use white for the positive and blue for the negative. And what we're going to do is figure out where we want our LEDs in our blaster. So let's say I want one of the LEDs here, I want one of the LEDs here, and I want one of the LEDs here. So what I'm going to do is cut a length of wire that's long enough to connect all of those. This was not long enough, but you get the idea. And we're going to splice in to each one. So we're going to need one on the very end connector. We're going to need one in the middle. So we'll just open that up like that. And then we'll need one near the end. Now obviously you're going to want to cut way more wire than this, but that'll get me an LED here, here, and here. And that's really all I need to do. So I'm going to line this up and cut the exact same thing. But we're not going to be breaking into this wire at all, simply because we don't need to. It's much easier to wire it this way. It helps if you have handy hands, which I'm going to be using. So we're going to take our negative connection and hook it up to the negative. Now, if you're putting this in a blaster, you're going to want to make sure everything fits a little bit better than this. But again, this is just a demonstration, so I don't really need to do that. And now that I have all these LEDs on one side, I'm just going to go ahead and solder the negative from the battery straight onto the LEDs. Now that we have all of these LEDs hooked up to all of the negative, we're going to go ahead and solder on the positive wire and connect them all in the same fashion that we connected the blue wire. I'm well aware of how terrible I am doing this, and you should also be cutting the metal leads on the LEDs just a little bit to fit in a little bit better. But again, I'm just doing this freehand, so I don't care. Man, this is really hard to do when you're standing up, bending over. So now that I have all of the positive hooked up, we're going to cut one more piece that we need. Now, you could have done this all in one, but depending on your location of the LEDs and whatnot, sometimes it's just easier to do another one. And so that's perfectly fine. These are the things that I use to control my LEDs. So I need to solder one to the middle lead and another one to any one of the other leads, doesn't matter. I will try to find these and put them in the description as well. But I think I got these in like a bag of 50, so yeah. Next thing, again, you should be trimming these, but I'm not going to, simply because of time and I don't really care. I'm going to end up taking this circuit apart anyway. I'm going to hook up this to the other end of the switch, because your resistor always goes onto the positive side of your battery. So now we're going to solder one of these to the positive of the LED and the other one to the positive of the battery, and it does not matter which one. So now that we have successfully hooked everything up, mind you, I did a terrible job. Basically, here's what we have ended up with. The positive of the battery is going into the resistor. It does not matter what side the resistor is on the switch, just as long as it's before the LEDs. Next up, we have a switch, and that's to turn the circuit on and off. And then that switch is going into the positive of all of the LEDs simultaneously. From there, we have all of the negatives of the LED simultaneously going into the negative of the battery. So all we have to do now is hook up a battery and throw the switch, and hopefully all of the LEDs will light up. And you can use this chain for as many LEDs as you want. As a matter of fact, if I really wanted to, I could come in and solder another LED here, and it wouldn't be much trouble. So you can use this to wire anything in any blaster as long as it's in this relative configuration. So all of these parts, the LEDs, the resistor, the battery, it's even the switch, it's all variable. It's however you want to do it. The kind of LEDs you have, how many you have of them, and the battery is going to determine what kind of resistor you need. So if you have any questions, go ahead and leave them in the comments below. I'll do my best to answer them, but please have some patience with me. Thanks for watching.